What if I told you that the stories you've been told your entire life are carefully crafted lies? That the urban legends whispered in dark corners and dismissed by mainstream society are actually breadcrumbs leading to the most shocking truths in human history? Tonight, we're going to peel back the layers of deception and reveal what they never wanted you to know. For decades, powerful forces have worked tirelessly to bury the truth beneath mountains of misinformation, ridicule, and fear. They've weaponized our own skepticism against us, training us to dismiss anything that doesn't fit their approved narrative as mere folklore, or the ravings of unstable minds. But what if those urban legends weren't born from imagination? What if they were the only way forbidden knowledge could survive in a world determined to erase it? Let's start with something that seems innocent enough: the legend of underground cities. You've heard the stories, haven't you? Vast networks of tunnels stretching beneath major metropolitan areas, forgotten civilizations living in the shadows below our feet. The authorities tell us these are nothing more than maintenance tunnels, old subway systems, natural cave formations. But construction workers know better. They've seen the architectural impossibilities down there. Chambers that predate any known civilization, technology that shouldn't exist, rooms that seem to stretch into infinity. The pattern is always the same: a construction crew breaks through into something they were never supposed to find. Within hours, mysterious officials arrive with credentials no one can verify. The workers are sworn to secrecy, often relocated, sometimes they simply disappear. The sites are sealed with concrete, declared unsafe, forgotten by history. But the workers talk, quietly, carefully, to those who know how to listen. One such worker described chambers lined with a material that seemed to absorb light itself. Walls covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. Another spoke of finding perfectly preserved artifacts that crumbled to dust the moment they were exposed to air, as if they were being protected by some unknown force until the moment of discovery. These aren't isolated incidents. They're happening in every major city on every continent with disturbing frequency. But why would anyone want to hide evidence of ancient civilizations? Because those civilizations possess knowledge that would shatter everything we think we know about human history, about our place in the universe, about the very nature of reality itself. This brings us to another legend that's been systematically discredited: the Men in Black. Not the sanitized movie version, but the original accounts that terrified witnesses into silence. These aren't government agents as we understand them. They're something else entirely. Something that exists in the spaces between official acknowledgement and complete denial. Witnesses describe encounters with individuals who seem almost human but not quite. Their skin has an artificial quality. Their movements are slightly off. Their speech patterns formal and antiquated. They arrive at the homes of people who've witnessed things they shouldn't have seen, driving cars that are simultaneously vintage and impossibly pristine. They know intimate details about the witnesses' lives that no government database could contain. They make requests that sound like suggestions but carry the weight of absolute authority. What's most disturbing is what happens to the witnesses afterward. Not the dramatic disappearances you might expect, but something more subtle and perhaps more sinister. Their memories begin to fade, their certainty wavers, their desire to discuss what they've seen simply evaporates. It's as if their very perception of reality is being edited, rewritten at the most fundamental level. Consider the account of a radar operator who tracked objects performing maneuvers that defied known physics. Within days of filing his report, 3 individuals in perfectly pressed black suits arrived at his home. They spoke to him for less than 20 minutes, never raised their voices, never made explicit threats. Yet by the time they left, he was convinced that what he had seen was merely a flock of birds, a weather balloon, a trick of light and shadow. Years later, reviewing his own notes, he couldn't understand how he had ever believed such an obvious impossibility. This systematic alteration of human memory and perception points to technologies that officially don't exist, wielded by entities that formally have no recognition. Yet the pattern repeats across decades, across continents, with chilling consistency. Now let's examine the legend that authorities work hardest to debunk: the hidden bases. Not the acknowledged military installations, but the facilities that exist in the spaces our maps refuse to show. Deep underground military bases that stretch for miles beneath the desert, connected by high-speed transportation systems that make conventional technology look primitive. The official position is always the same: these installations don't exist, the witnesses are mistaken, the evidence is fabricated. Yet former military personnel continue to come forward with accounts that are remarkably consistent, despite the witnesses never having contact with each other. They describe elevators that descend for minutes rather than seconds, reaching levels that according to official blueprints shouldn't exist. They speak of entire cities built into the earth, powered by energy sources that aren't supposed to be possible with current technology. One former security guard described patrolling levels so deep that the elevator ride took nearly an hour. He spoke of laboratories filled with equipment he couldn't identify, of holding cells designed for occupants that weren't human, of libraries containing books written in languages that didn't match any known human script. When he tried to photograph what he'd seen, his camera malfunctioned in ways that suggested the presence of some kind of electromagnetic interference. But perhaps most telling are the financial records. Trillions of dollars in government spending that can't be accounted for through official channels. Black budget allocations that dwarf the acknowledged defense spending of entire nations. Money flowing to projects that don't officially exist, managed by agencies that have no public recognition, overseen by officials whose names appear in no government directory. Where does this money go? What requires such massive financial investment while maintaining absolute secrecy? The urban legends provide the only logical explanation. Infrastructure projects on a scale that would fundamentally alter our understanding of human capability and intention. This leads us to the most disturbing legend of all, the one about hybridization programs. For generations, people have reported encounters with beings that seem intent on genetic experimentation. These accounts are dismissed as fantasy, as the products of disturbed minds or popular culture influence. Yet the consistency of the reports, the specific medical details provided by witnesses with no medical training, the physical evidence that authorities work so hard to discredit, all point to something far more real and far more systematic than mere imagination. Witnesses describe procedures that seem designed to harvest genetic material, to create hybrid offspring, to conduct experiments that blur the line between human and something else. They speak of seeing children who are clearly not entirely human, of nurseries filled with beings that exist somewhere between our species and another. Most disturbing of all, they report being told that this process has been ongoing for generations, that many of us carry genetic markers we don't understand, that humanity itself is being gradually modified for purposes we can't comprehend. The authorities respond to these accounts with ridicule, with psychiatric evaluation, with systematic character assassination, yet the witnesses persist, often at great personal cost, because the truth of what they've experienced is more important to them than social acceptance or personal safety. Consider the case of women who report being taken repeatedly throughout their lives, who describe medical procedures they couldn't possibly understand, who wake up with physical evidence of intervention they can't explain. These women often discover that their mothers, their grandmothers, their sisters have similar experiences. The pattern suggests something multi-generational, something that treats human families like livestock breeding programs. The genetic samples taken, the embryos removed, the children shown to the mothers years later, all point to a systematic effort to create something new, something that combines human genetics with characteristics that don't exist in our natural evolutionary path. But who or what is behind this vast conspiracy? The legends speak of controllers who exist above and beyond human authority structures, not elected officials or corporate executives, but entities that manipulate both from positions of absolute secrecy. They've established systems of control so subtle that we don't even recognize them as control, so pervasive that we mistake them for natural order. These controllers have mastered the art of hiding in plain sight. They operate through proxy organizations, shell companies, think tanks, and academic institutions that shape public opinion while concealing their true agenda. They've weaponized our educational systems to train us not to ask the right questions, our media to distract us from seeking real answers, our scientific establishment to dismiss evidence that doesn't serve their purposes. The most brilliant aspect of their system is how it turns us against each other. Those who question the official narrative are labeled as conspiracy theorists, lunatics, dangers to society. Those who accept the approved version of reality are rewarded with social acceptance, professional advancement, the comfort of belonging. We police each other, suppress each other, silence each other, all while believing we're protecting truth and reason. But the cracks in their facade are growing wider. Too many people have seen too much, experienced too much, learned too much to be silenced by ridicule and social pressure. The urban legends persist because they carry fragments of suppressed truth. Pieces of a puzzle that reveals the true nature of our reality when properly assembled. The construction workers who've seen the impossible chambers, the radar operators who've tracked the impossible objects, the security guards who've witnessed the impossible projects, the families who've endured the impossible procedures, they're all connected. Their experiences form a pattern that points to the existence of forces and technologies and agendas that exist entirely outside the reality we've been taught to accept. The question isn't whether these urban legends are true. The question is whether we have the courage to follow them to their logical conclusion, to accept what they reveal about the world we actually inhabit, rather than the world we've been told we inhabit. Tonight, as you lie in bed, remember that beneath your feet stretch tunnels that predate recorded history. Above your head, objects move through the sky that obey no known laws of physics. Around you, systems of control operate with precision and purpose that span generations. And within you, genetic codes carry information that may not be entirely human. The urban legends aren't entertainment, they're warnings, they're testimonies. They're the only record we have of truths too dangerous to be acknowledged, too important to be forgotten. The controllers have worked for centuries to keep us ignorant, compliant, divided, but knowledge, once awakened, cannot be destroyed. Truth, once glimpsed, cannot be unseen. The legends persist because they must persist, because they carry the only hope we have of understanding what we really are, where we really came from, and what is really being done to us. The choice is yours. You can dismiss these words as the ravings of another conspiracy theorist, return to your comfortable illusions, continue living the life they've designed for you, or you can start asking the questions they don't want you to ask. Start looking for the evidence they don't want you to find. Start connecting the dots they've worked so hard to keep separate. But be warned, once you see the pattern, once you understand the scope of the deception, once you grasp the magnitude of what's been hidden from us, there's no going back to ignorance. The truth doesn't free you from the system of control. It shows you exactly how trapped you really are. The urban legends are calling. Are you ready to listen?